All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine. I'm one of the project managers at Great Blue Research. Happy to be sharing the results of this year's customer satisfaction survey with you all. This is our second time that we've done this survey for Reading. We did our first one back in 2020, and this one was conducted towards the end of this year of 2023. So let's dive right in. So a little bit about Great Blue. We do a wide variety of different marketing research surveys, mostly on the quantitative side like this one, primarily digital with some phone as well. And we do a lot of research with other public power utilities across the country, and specifically a lot within Massachusetts as well, just like Reading. So our project overview here, like I mentioned, this was the second year we conducted the customer satisfaction survey for RMLD. So we surveyed both residential and commercial customers for the survey with really the goal of identifying areas of strengths for Reading, and as well as areas for improvement, so that ultimately we can improve ratings moving forward and determine areas of improvement. So our areas of investigation, I like to kind of think of this page as, if this were a book, this is your table of contents or different chapters that we're going to cover today. So really briefly here, looking at satisfaction with Reading as a whole, customer service, some questions about communication methods and desired topics of communication, should the peak interest and preferences, any anticipated bill payment challenges that folks have, satisfaction with both the rebate application process as well as outage restoration, knowledge and interest in air source heat pumps, likelihood to install solar panels, participation in Reading's energy efficiency, electrification, and rebate programs, and then lastly, the overall understanding and interest in time of use rates. So here's our research methodology snapshot on the residential side. Like I mentioned before, we used a mixed methodology approach here. So we did some phone surveys as well as unlimited digital surveys. So in total, we had 1,215 completed surveys, which is very high for a public power utility. So that was definitely impressive. 200 of those surveys were conducted by phone. And then, like I mentioned, we left the digital survey open for about 3 weeks for an unlimited number of completed surveys. And so in total, on the digital side, we had 1,015 completed surveys. The survey itself was 44 questions long, and the margin of error was plus or minus 2.8%. So what that means is if we were going to conduct this survey another 100 times, the results would come back somewhere within plus or minus 2.8 percentage points of the results I'm going to share with you all today. And the research dates, we started fielding the survey in mid-January, January 16th, and then wrapped it up towards the end of February. So again, that includes both the portion of phone fielding and digital fielding, and those periods didn't overlap, just to ensure that we didn't have any customers trying to take the survey both by phone and digitally.
Yes, questions along the way?
Yes. Okay. We have a question. Go ahead, Dave. You got a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to, you said 200 were phoned by a random sample, right?
Correct, yes.
And then another 800 were filled out online?
It was 1,050 were online, yeah.
1,050 online versus 200 with random phone?
Correct, yeah.
So my question is then, you have 1,000, so most of them are from people visiting the link. How do you know the distribution of those are actually random, or who they are, or that they represent a random sample of the community, the 1,000?
Yeah, that's a great question. And a lot of times what we do for a digital survey to make sure that it's more of a random sampling is we won't go ahead and send it to everyone all at once. What we'll do is we'll randomly select a portion of the customer list to send it to first. And then based on what we get from that, we'll do another random sampling of people. So we don't send it out to everyone digitally. We send it out to random buckets of people, which is inherently kind of like how a phone survey works, really, because a phone survey, you're randomly calling people. So here we're just kind of randomly sampling people from a digital methodology approach, but just doing so in buckets of a random sampling of customers. But that's a great question.
Quick follow-up. So this isn't just people who might have seen the link somehow and filled it out on the website, or?
So that's a portion of it as well. So there's a lot of different ways that we do digital surveys. So some of it is going to be more directly, like I mentioned, through emails. that are sent directly to customers, but then some of it is going to be people visiting, seeing the link on the website and visiting it that way. In the grand scheme of things, we usually see a lot more people taking the survey when we directly send it to them versus if they go onto the website, to pay a bill or look for some other information. We don't usually get as many completes from that link as we do from more direct outreach methods.
And then I'll stop. But then you know how many were from your solicitation to a random email versus how many were just from the static link on the website or whatever?
I don't have that number off the top of my head right now, but I would just have to look for it. But we do have the ability to, collect and break down that data. I just don't have it right now.
Stempak?
Just a follow-on question, Catherine, to that. So, do we know that the 200 telephone recipients are mutually the 1,000 plus digital?
Sorry, well, I think you broke up a little bit there. What were you asking about the 200 phone surveys?
I was asking whether the telephone survey recipients were mutually exclusive from the 1,000 other digital surveys. In other words, could it be possible for people that you called also did the digital or vice versa?
Yeah, so we that's why we field them both at separate points. So we'll do the phone portion first, and from who took the survey by phone, we remove them from who we reach out to from the digital survey to make sure that they don't have a chance to take the survey twice. Of course, there might be a couple who sneak through if they're people who took it on the website, because we don't have a way of knowing who that respondent is who took it on the website. That's essentially functions as an open link versus, just directly sending it to customers. So those are kind of the exceptions to it. But yeah, usually that's why we don't field the two simultaneously, so that we can remove those people who took the survey by phone from our digital outreach methods.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So
we have one more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll pass it along. But could you just comment briefly on the confidence level versus the margin of error?
Yep. Yeah. So what a confidence level means is that when I mentioned, conducting the survey 100 times, what this means is that 95 times out of 100, so that's the 95% confidence interval, the results will come back somewhere within that margin of error. So essentially what that means is essentially how reliable the data is. Usually a confidence level of 95% is pretty common in marketing research types of surveys. You can get us high as like a 99% confidence level, but that's not typical for survey research. I think that would be more typical for, if you're doing more like scientific research and stuff like that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Keep going.
All the data that we're going to learn about from this study, like how much we think about it as a board, of how much stock is put in it, does depend on liability that we're talking about right now.
Yep.
So, and 1,000 being from a link that you don't know who filled out the link, whether it was as a result of your emails or somebody just visiting the website. And I'm not saying it happened, but somebody could go if they wanted to and fill it out 30 times.
No, they can't actually. No. So we put an IP restriction on it, so the same person can't take the survey multiple times from the same device or from the same household.
Got it. But somebody who wanted to, for whatever reason, say, hey, send it to 40 people and say, well, I want you to push point of view, do that and send it to whoever they want to, and you could get 100 or 200 results out. Somebody wanted to promote the link, they could do that. You wouldn't know.
If they were motivated to and knew 100 people that also wanted to take the survey, you theoretically could do that, but we don't usually find that kind of stuffing the ballot box principle to come up much in public power utility surveys.
I just don't know how you could come up with a 2.8 margin of error based on 1,000 being from a survey monkey.
So it's based off of your customer size and how many available records we have. So, we plug in the number of customers, which is your total population size. And then we also plug in the number of completes we got. So with 1,215 completes and the number of customers, I don't have that off the top of my head, you get the margin of error plus or minus 2.8%.
That's only if you know that it's a truly random distribution. Don't know. It's okay. I'm just saying we need to think about that as a board. I know we talked about this before the survey of like, I think a 400 random phone would have done the trick. Without
400 random phone surveys would have given you a margin of error of about 4.8%. So this actually gave you a better margin of error because you had more surveys that were completed.
wanna, but it's okay, I'll stop now. I mean, we're going around the same point. Don't know what SurveyMonkey links are filled out randomly by a random distribution of RMLD customers. Don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of the limitations. We do what we can on our end to send the survey out digitally, but candidly, it's a lot more difficult to get 400 people to take a phone survey now than it was 5-6 years ago. A lot of that's because of the pandemic. A lot of it's also because of a lot of other companies telling people not to answer the phone for fear of scams and things like that. So it's a lot easier to get more people to fill out a survey digitally than 400 phone surveys. I mean, even the 200 phone surveys is difficult to get, but we still did it. But yeah, it's just the way the world's changing.
Are going to be less likely to fill out a survey. Get fewer older people. 1,200 or 1,000 probably don't have a lot of.
Yeah, so I'll actually get to that in this next slide. But when you look at the demographics, we have age here. And so actually more of the customers who took the survey this time were, 55 years or older than on the younger side. So that is one change we're seeing with digital surveys is as they become more and more mainstream, it's not so much that they're really concentrated on younger customers. They're really more representative of your customer base. But what we find when we do phone surveys is that they tend to lean a lot more towards older customers than younger customers because younger customers are just less likely to pick up the phone nowadays, especially if they don't know who's on the other end of the line. So this is pretty in line with the trends we've seen in the past couple of years since the pandemic hit. And then looking at income here, pretty even breakdown here. We do have a lot of people who said prefer not to say, but that's very common for a question that's more sensitive like income. Rent versus own, 90% of the respondents were homeowners compared to 8.5% who were renters. And then for town of service, it looks like a pretty even spread across, the Reading, Wilmington, North Reading, and Linfield service areas. So
somebody says they oh.
Oh, prefer not to say.
Prefer not to say, I guess would be a better thing there. 1.4% don't know whether they own or rent. Okay.
Yeah, some things you just can't explain.
I digress. Go on, please.
So for the research methodology snapshot on the commercial side, again, a mixed methodology approach. In total on the commercial side, we had 67 completed surveys. 50 of those were done by phone and then 17 were online. This is pretty in line with what we see for commercial surveys for all utilities that we work with. Usually we end up somewhere with, 50 to 75 completed surveys. So the 67 is not, an out of the ordinary low number. The 17 online is also in line with what we've seen too. It's a lot harder for us to get businesses to take surveys online than it is to get them to take surveys by phone. So that's where the phone methodology is actually holding up a little bit more. Survey length was 42 questions, so pretty similar to on the residential side. And our margin of error here is plus or minus 11.8%, just given the lower sample size there. Research dates were the same as the residential survey. We fielded the two surveys in parallel with one another. And our respondent snapshot here. So for number of employees, we had a lot more small businesses taking the survey that were either, less than 15 employees or 15 to less than 30 employees. More folks, more businesses that rent their property versus those who own. And then again, a pretty even spread of where these businesses were located in the RMLD service territory. So our key study findings, this first page is what we call our organizational characteristics. So these are some characteristics we use to, sorry, is that a question? Okay, so this is our list of organizational characteristics, and we use these to evaluate many different surveys across the country. So they're pretty standard as a point of comparison. And what I highlighted here in green is where Reading was really, performing above national averages, but also just where they received the highest ratings. So in particularly reliability of service and customer interactions and communication received high ratings on the residential side. And then reliability also received high ratings on the commercial side, as well as overall satisfaction with RMLD. I just circled in red the areas where the lower ratings were scored for. So helping customers understand solar installations and rebates was the lower rated characteristic for both residential and commercial. Have the averages there on the bottom. The one thing to note is that we did change the questions a bit since the last study, so the averages aren't necessarily comparing the exact same set of questions. But I think the important things to note are just where you see increases in ratings and characteristics that were measured year after year. So communication experienced increases as well as reliability. Community service remained pretty consistently high on the residential side. So those are all positive takeaways here. So now diving into the findings here, a couple of these slides are just sort of our takeaways that we saw as we dove into the data and the report. So one of them was regarding awareness of rebate and program offerings for residents in particular. You'll see in a couple of slides, we have a table where we looked at overall participation in different RMLD programs and services for both residential and commercial customers. And we looked at, whether they participate in the programs and then whether or not they were actually aware that that program existed. What we noticed was that there were a lot of programs that people, a large segment of customers were not aware of, namely the electrical panel upgrade rebate had the lowest awareness level, as well as the online energy efficiency store, electric vehicle charger rebate, air source heat pump rebate, and solar rebate. So the recommendation here was to continue to push communication efforts about those programs just to make sure that all folks who are interested in participating are aware that they exist and can take advantage of those offerings. Next one is on the ability to opt into text message notifications. So this was a question we asked in the survey about overall interest in opting into these text messages for things like shred the peak alerts, outage updates, and bill payment information. And a large segment of customers were interested in receiving those texts. We also saw that a lot of customers indicated they would like to receive more information in general about outages and power restoration updates. So kind of pairing those two together shows that folks are really interested in receiving text messages, and specifically text messages when it comes to outages and getting those more frequent updates. And then lastly, about air source heat pumps. This was an area where we saw a pretty significant increase in overall knowledge of air source heat pumps since we did our last survey in 2020. So that was certainly impressive. 37.5% of residents and 26.9% of businesses said that they would be interested in installing an air source heat pump. Likely seeing smaller numbers there, mostly because people may not be necessarily in the market and really considering that kind of a purchase. If you don't necessarily have a need to, you might not be thinking about it. But also when you look at, a number like 37.5%, this is over a third of customers are overall interested. So while the percentages themselves might look small because they're not the majority of customers, it's still a very significant segment of customers who are starting to explore this area. But it would be beneficial to, continue to educate more folks who aren't as knowledgeable about what the benefits are, so that they understand and have a more full knowledge base about the subject. So diving into the data a little bit more. So a couple of slides back, I showed you those organizational characteristics. And here we have a follow-up question about reasons for any poor ratings that were provided for RMLD. And so the top reasons were high rates and costs. That's usually what we see as a top rating across the board, no matter what. No communication and interaction, as well as lack of renewable energy options, discounts, and subsidies. So that kind of leans into what I was saying before about, rebate programs and awareness. A lot of times we find that customers don't necessarily think that their utility doesn't offer these programs, but they're just not aware of what their utility is offering. So that's a big education piece as well. So some questions about customer service. These questions were only asked to people who indicated that, yes, they did indeed have an interaction with Reading in the recent past. And so most of those folks said that their interaction entailed them calling the Reading office, 65.9% on the commercial side, 59% on the residential side. Some other folks said that they were emailing with customer service or visiting the office in person. And then overall, has satisfied you with the way that the RMLD employee handled the call or visit. Strong satisfaction ratings here. Both residents and commercials reported increased satisfaction with customer service since the 2020 study. 95.4% of residents and 97.7% of businesses. So really high ratings there.
Catherine, if I could, just a quick question on the those who provided poor ratings, which always cite high cost as reason. The cost I'm assuming you're referring to here is for the actual program, whatever it might be, not the cost of, cents per kilowatt hour that readiness provided. Is that correct?
Yeah, so this would actually be referring back to the organizational characteristics, specifically tying it into rates. So that was one area that we asked them to evaluate. So it's more specific to the actual rates that they're paying for their electric service versus the cost of any particular program or service.
Really?
I find that very surprising. Yeah, for those who were dissatisfied.
Oh, for those who
Right.
are dissatisfied.
Right. So that's the important thing to take into consideration. It's why we have sample size up here. So, this is only of the 200 people who gave poor ratings for any of the organizational characteristics. So this wasn't just specific to rates, but it's just of those 200 that gave poor ratings, 40% of them attributed it to issues with, high rates.
Thank you. I'm just very surprised because our rates are so low compared to other providers.
Yeah.
IOUs.
Yep. And I think that's a huge, we do see this a lot for public power utilities with the same, kind of explanation of, well, our rates are lower than other IOUs. And they, for the most part, they definitely are. But I think a lot of the issue is an education piece with customers. A lot of customers don't even know that they're a customer of a community-owned utility. And even then, they don't know what the benefits of being a customer of a community-owned utility are. So they don't have an understanding of, where their rates are compared to what, their neighbors in a different town that's serviced by, Eversource, for example, might be experiencing. So I'm sure if they had a point of comparison, they would have a better understanding of it. But a lot of times people are just siloed in on what their rates are, and people are always going to find issues with their rates because they can always be lower, even though that's not realistic, but people are always going to complain about rates.
Catherine, if I may just clarify, so this survey was right in the middle of our
Might have influenced some. Yeah,
we're doing a lot.
There's always people don't want to pay. I mean, it's just a human nature thing. So I regardless, no matter what amount of communication you're going to get, there's going to be a customer that they have to pay.
Yep.
They want to pay, right? And that's just the bottom line.
Yep, exactly.
Exactly.
All right.
Go ahead. Dave. Good enough follow-up.
Is did you break down, like, this is of the customer base, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Survey, obviously. Like, how many were from each of the 4 towns that we serve? Do you have that somewhere?
Yep. Yeah. So that's up here. Bear with me just a second. So that's this chart that we have town of service. So we had 38.8% were from Reading, 32.8% from Wilmington, 19.9% from North Reading, and then 7.3% from Linfield.
That's roughly close. But a little bit higher, but a little bit higher.
All righty.
I'd be interested in see whether there's different views by town. And it would be because one consideration, we get picked by the people in Reading, and we're owned by the town of Reading. Not to say for one child over the other 3, but that being said, it would be nice to know what does Reading think, and then also what do the others think, and they might have different.
Yeah, I can absolutely cross tab of the town of each of the residents by what their ratings for this question, so we can see where more of the high rates or cost issues arose and where there were greater concerns in different areas, if there's any differences there.
I was actually asking more generally about the whole survey, not just about that question.
Yeah, we can do it for the whole survey as well while we're at it.
Just to clarify, we're affiliated with the town of Reading. They're not owned by it.
Yep.
Yes.
Alrighty.
I haven't reread the white paper.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay. Go ahead, keep going.
All right. So we did our customer service here. And then, similarly, we had a question here asking for anyone who did have an interaction with customer service, but reported that they were either somewhat or very dissatisfied with the way the interaction went. we asked them to tell us why in an open-ended format as well. So what you'll notice here is these are all, instead of percentages, they're all n equals because our sample sizes were so low here. I mean, we're talking about 32 people and 2 businesses. We didn't want to put percentages in because it doesn't really give a good idea of what people are actually saying. So what we see here, though, is that the 2 top reasons for dissatisfaction were poor communication and poor customer service, which makes sense. And then, following that were billing issues and poor rebate programs. But we just, want to note here that it's n equals 10 is really our sample size. So it would show up as about a third of the customers, but we wanted to make that a little bit clearer there. So getting into some of our questions about communication methods. First, the bar chart on the left, looking at the value of different communication methods provided by Reading. A lot of folks giving high ratings for the value of the email newsletters as well as the RMLD website. Ratings for the newsletters increased over 2020, 85.8% for residents and 68.7% for businesses. And then similarly, the website also received really high ratings as well, 79% among residents and 77.6% among businesses. Slightly lower ratings for the webinars, Facebook and Twitter. A lot of those being, not necessarily everyone is going to be following you on social media. So there's probably a lot of folks in there who aren't interacting with you on social media as well as attending the webinars. These were, the webinars and Facebook were questions that we added in this year, so we don't have tracking data for those. And in an open-ended format, again, we asked what ways Reading's communication methods could be improved to provide more value for customers. A lot of folks said, no ways, you're doing a good job, no issues at all. We did have some folks referencing more email communication, as well as not using social media, less emphasis on social media. Some folks requesting text messages as well as the newsletter in addition. More questions about communication. Looking on the left there, how would you describe the frequency at which you receive information from Reading? These are really high ratings compared to a lot of public power utilities. On a national level, these numbers are usually in the 70 percentage point range for about right communication, but here 89.4% of residents and 92.5% of businesses feel the communication they receive, the frequency at which they receive information is about right. So that's a great positive there. For topics that folks would like to receive more information about, primarily, like I said before, outages and power restoration updates, and then, some things about energy conservation, how to conserve electricity, as well as education on thermostats, energy saving measures, and energy apps. So really folks want information on outages, but they also are really looking for a lot more energy conservation related information. So here's where we ask customers how interested they would be in receiving text messages from RMLD about outage updates, shred the peak, and bill payment information. So over 7 out of 10 residents and almost 3/5 of commercial respondents said that they'd be either very or somewhat interested in receiving those text messages. More of the commercial customers were not at all interested compared to residential customers. So definitely something that more residents are in favor of than businesses, but regardless, it's still the majority of both customer bases that are interested in these text messages. So looking specifically at communication with respect to the shred the peak email notifications, more residents, over half of residents said that they're currently receiving these notifications from Reading compared to 38.8% of businesses. And when asked the best way to notify them that it's a peak time and that they should conserve their energy usage during that time period, most folks said that they'd like to receive email notifications. While we did see a lot of residents who would like to receive text messages as well. So primarily looking at more digital methods like email and text message for those notifications. Payment assistance options. So first, we wanted to ask if folks or their organization as a whole anticipate having any challenges paying their electric bill in the next 6 months. This is the question we've been asking a lot of utilities since the start of COVID, just because there were some financial issues that a lot of folks and businesses experienced that did prevent them from being able to pay their bills on time during that period. But the good news here is that very few customers anticipated having any issues, so not a grave concern at all. And then looking at awareness of different payment assistance options that Reading offers, over 2/5 of residents, so 43.5%, said they were very or somewhat aware of those offerings prior to the survey effort. Looking at rebates now, ask the question, have you received a rebate from Reading? Impressively, almost a quarter of residents said that they received one, which is actually a pretty high number when you think about it, compared to 9% of businesses. So definitely something that more residents have taken advantage of thus far than on the commercial side. And then of those customers who said that they've previously received a rebate from Reading, we asked how satisfied they were with the process of applying for and receiving that rebate. And very high satisfaction ratings across the board, both on the residential and commercial side. 90.6% of residents were satisfied, and all commercial customers who have received a rebate reported being satisfied with that experience as well.
Did they give a reason? I noticed you got on the not at all satisfied, like 3.3%. Is there any particular reason that the survey indicated why that was?
We didn't have an open end for that question, so we don't have specific responses for why they were not at all satisfied. I mean, this is, I think, one customer, because there's only 12 people who said, 12 commercial customers who said that they got a rebate. So 3.3% is likely just one customer. But yeah, we unfortunately didn't have an open end for that question to have any kind of insight as to why they were not at all satisfied. So looking at power outage restoration and whether or not folks found that to be acceptable or not, we did, of note here, we had an answer option for those who had not experienced a power outage in the past year. Those folks did not, their answers were not included in the data here. So this is just looking at those customers who experienced any kind of a power outage in the past year and how acceptable they found the time to restore power to be. So 82.2% of residents, that's down slightly from 87.3%. So the time to restore power was very or somewhat acceptable. However, of note, we did see about a 4 percentage point increase in people who said that they don't recall if the time to restore power was acceptable or not. It's likely for these people that the time they experienced was probably not that long because they didn't recall the experience. So usually if people recall their experience, they recall it for negative reasons. So that's likely where a lot of those people who found it to be less acceptable just don't recall what the experience was like. Similarly, on the commercial side, 92.3% so the time to restore power was acceptable. That's an increase over what we saw in 2020. So looking at air source heat pumps, what you'll see in the table on the left is that in total, more respondents said that they're knowledgeable of the concept of air source heat pumps this year than they did in 2020. So, about a 12 percentage point increase on the residential side and about an 8 percentage point increase on the business side. So those are pretty significant increases, especially when you look at your margin of error. On the residential side, our margin of error was less than 3%. So seeing an increase this big is definitely noteworthy. And when looking at interest level here, 37.5% of residents and 26.9% of businesses were overall interested in exploring installing an air source heat pump in their house or at their business. So like I mentioned, it's not the majority of customers, and there are a lot of customers who aren't interested at this time. So education to customers about what the benefits of air source heat pumps definitely can't hurt. But it is important to note that there is still a significant segment of customers that are interested in exploring these options moving forward. Looking at solar panels, the majority of folks were not likely to install solar panels at their home or business in the next, or actually this is just general, in general of all time, not likely to install solar panels. As you see here, 57.6% of residents and 77.6% of businesses are not at all likely. So not something that folks are as interested in as they are in other technology. Looking at the renewable choice program specifically for residents, asked how likely folks would be to participate in the renewable choice program. Over 3 out of 10 residents, so 31.7%, said that they would be very or somewhat likely to participate in the renewable choice program. And we asked a similar question on the commercial side, and over a third of commercial customers, 34.4%, so that they would be likely to participate in the renewable choice program. Did
they give any reasons why they're not likely? there any reason why behind that?
Yeah, again, we don't have, specifics, but I think when it comes to these kind of program enrollments like this, I mean, looking at, a third of customers or 3 out of 10 customers, again, it's still a significant segment, even though it's not the majority of customers. But when you're asking people to enroll in these programs where they're, investing a little bit more, you do always have some part of the customer base that's not as into, funding these renewable choice programs. And when you're looking at anything that's going to ask for, any kind of a opt-in or a bill increase or some extra kind of effort on the part of the customers, you're going to see some people who just aren't interested because they don't have as much of a motivation to be as some other customers might be. So I think that's where you get a lot more of those not at all likely customers probably fall into that category versus finding anything particularly wrong with the program, just simply not being interested in it.
Let me ask a question to maybe the department. Something we could do here to make this go better.
Yeah, so I think for something like this where you're looking at a program, I think education is key. And I think, breaking it down so that it's easier for the simple, average everyday customer who doesn't have a lot of knowledge about renewable energy, breaking down things like the benefits of the program and, what their investment's going to look like, but then ultimately what benefits they're going to see from it. I think those are the best ways to really, promote and communicate about the program in a way that's educational, but also, kind of advertising and really, promoting it to customers, because people really aren't going to invest in something if they don't see, a direct benefit to them as a customer. Unfortunately, a lot of people will say that they're, interested in renewable energy, but when they're asked to, pay more money on their bill, suddenly they're not as interested in it. So a lot of times customers just really need to be motivated by, direct benefits that they'll see as a customer versus benefits to the utility as a whole.
I'm in 100%. I'm also in solar 1 and 2. So it's giving me a benefit in my bill.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's only like $3 for the 100%, I think, on my last bill.
Yes.
Right.
We're already as reinvigorate the renewable choice. Also, like 2020, already at 29.
I think you just cut out a little bit there. Sorry.
My apologies. So I think bottom line, our action items and the newsletters. I can make a high reference in terms of renewable. Has not been the highest priority in terms of community. First rolled it out, it got a lot of press, a lot of interest. I'll take a look at what those.
I think I might have missed the ending there, but was there any like a question?
Sorry.
Sorry.
So the RMLD team, the staff has taken on action items, basically. So go ahead, yeah, back to you.
Awesome.
Okay.
Sounds good. All right, so here, this question, looking at kind of a table of different rebate programs and energy efficiency offerings that Reading offers, looking at if people either have participated in the past, will continue in the future, or have not, but they plan to pursue it in the future. And then also looking if people were even aware of the program in the first place. So overall, the highest levels of current or past, current, and future participation are for the no-cost home energy assessment, as well as the online energy efficiency store. We also saw a lot of anticipated future use of the air source heat pump rebate. So that's just kind of showing some more traction and interest that is growing towards air source heat pumps. And then looking at overall awareness of the program, we saw more folks saying that they were not aware of the electrical panel upgrade rebate, but we did see a lot of other customers reporting they're not aware of some of the other programs, such as the EV charger rebate program, as well as the online energy efficiency store and the air source heat pump rebate. And then similar line of questioning here on the commercial side for more specific to commercial programs and services, more.
Oh,
go ahead.
Catherine, we got a question.
Yep.
Actually, Catherine's not addressing you, I'm addressing it to the.
Okay.
came at RMLD, I mean, we refer to this as these heat pumps. They're really air conditioners, as well as heat pumps, right? I mean, I own multiple ones, and they work great. Why do we call them air conditioners and heat pumps? I mean, there are people who don't know that they're an air conditioner.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a heat supply. I mean, even though the technology is heat pump, it pumps it both ways.
It pumps it both ways. And I mean, I've certainly used mine in the wintertime for heat. And in the summertime, I use it for air conditioning. I'm just wondering if people realize that it have dual functionality options, which might make it more enticing to want a heat pump. It's not a heat pump. It's an air conditioner heat pump. I mean, yeah, an air conditioner.
Yeah.
We'll call it another term for it. But I'm just thinking it might be something as simple as that. They just don't know. Everybody would
Yeah.
love to have air conditioning.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So much of it is the way it's messaged and packaged to people. And when you're talking about, customers who don't have as much knowledge about what this technology entails, I mean, I think I've always, when you look at the word heat pump, you're thinking it's just a heating technology. It doesn't have a cooling side of it, but it can go both ways. So I think, yeah, the way you kind of package and explain that message to customers is going to make a big difference.
And if you've already got a furnace, why do you need another heat pump?
Right.
But you might want an air conditioner, which are fantastic, very efficient units. So
Exactly. That's a great point. Okay, so looking at commercial programs, we saw the highest levels of current and future use for the energy assessment program, as well as the energy initiative rebate. And then the highest numbers of folks not wanting to or not planning to use the commercial solar rebate program or the EV charger rebate. And again, those are really contingent on what people have for plans in the future. So we did see that a lot of folks were not planning to invest in solar. So logically, it makes sense that they're also not planning to take advantage of the rebate program. And same goes kind of on the EV side. If that's not really part of the agenda items for the organization, then they're not necessarily going to be interested in the rebate for it. So looking at the time of use rate programs here as kind of our last couple of questions here. We had a lot of text in here, just kind of educating customers about what time of use rates are in case they haven't really heard of those terms before. And when asked about their understanding of time of use rates, we saw that almost half of residents, 49.4%, and over half of businesses, 53.7%, said that they either have an excellent or good understanding of time of use rates prior to this survey effort. And then when asked if they'd be interested in taking advantage of a program like a time of use rate program, if Reading were to offer one, over 2/5 of residents and over a third of businesses said that they'd be interested in that kind of a rate structure. One thing to note here is that you saw a lot more businesses who are not at all interested. And that really, makes sense, is in line with what we see in a lot of other surveys as well, because a lot of businesses really aren't able to shift the way that they do business. Based on the time of day, based on peak energy usage, it's a lot more convenient for a household to do that than a business. So that's pretty typical there.
Go ahead, Dave.
Catherine, just a question on the data point there. You just said that over 2/5 of residential respondents said they would be interested, but the data says down in the right-hand chart. So the question was, how interested would you be in a rate that rewards conservation during high peak hours and penalizes for high usage during those same peak hours? It's 19.8 very interested and 40.4 somewhat interested. So isn't that 60%?
Yeah, that actually should be 3/5 instead of 2/5. That's a good catch there. So there's actually more interest than we thought.
There's a typo there. So, and then there's another 9.4 who aren't sure. So 60%, better than 60% say they want this or they're interested in it. 10% aren't sure, and 30% either say not very or not at all. So that means by a 2-to-1 margin, 60% to 30% of either very interested or somewhat interested versus not very interested or not at all. You have a 2-to-1 margin supporting and wanting. Is that a fair takeaway, resident?
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead, Bob.
A quick comment that there's a little difference here between time of use rate and understanding versus people not understanding rebates or not wanting solar. I see a conflict with those. I mean, I would think someone who wants an EV charger would want to go solar and want batteries, yet a lot of the respondents on this survey wanted nothing to do with that data that we got. Yet here, everyone says they understand time of use. I don't know if everybody really knows what.
Sure.
The education on time of use. How do you?
So you're saying
how
they
do
don't
you say
understand
that?
what they're answering?
I believe so.
So, but
Potentially.
just once
Well-
the question says, how interested would you be in a rate that rewards conservation during high peak hours and penalizes high usage during those same peak hours? So the question explains right there, it explains what the rate, it's like you're going to pay more for peak. So I feel like the question doesn't say time of use, it explains what it means.
Right, right.
But it could, it's like, well, that means you can't use your power between, 3 and 7 p.m. That's a different question you just asked me, right? This is just a generic question, right? No, and again, we had a data point that came back that was, I don't want to do that, and now we're saying, oh, I want to do this, right? So that's why I'm taking this one with a grain of salt.
Sure.
Yeah, and I will just add too, when you look at something like time of use rates, it's asking for a lot less involvement from the customer. I mean, it is asking you to conserve energy during those times and not use it during peak hours, which is a challenge for sure, but it's asking for less of a monetary investment than something like solar energy or electric vehicles do. And I think when we do a lot of surveys and we're asking about solar and we're asking about electric vehicles, people are really primarily turned off still by the cost of these things. Electric vehicles are still on average more expensive than gasoline vehicles, and solar is still an investment. If you're, putting up panels, on your house, it's something that not all customers can afford to do. Whereas if you look at a time of use rate and it's, oh, well, I just have to either, just limit my electric usage during this time, that's something that might be a little bit more feasible for customers. And that's why we usually see a little bit more interest in something like that than solar or electric vehicles or programs like that.
So I think maybe the follow-up question to this, you know, that are very interested or somewhat interested, had a follow-up question that said, if this rate were in place, would you subscribe to it?
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's the question.
Yeah,
That's
or
the
even
question.
just asking customers like how likely they would be to actually reduce their electric usage, because a lot of people say it's a great idea, but then it's, oh, well, the times are actually 3 to 7. Well, that's tough,
2 to 7, but yeah, I mean, but I think we've had this discussion a few times, and when there's a lift and a workload involved to like research it, make the phone call, ask for the meter, there's enough of a friction there that people don't go ahead and do it. I mean, have data on how many are asking about it, and then once they hear about it, they don't take it, or just.
I think so, where we are from a practicality, as much as a lot more. Things we're doing right now is we're putting the MDM back to where quest to actually make the investment. Partway there. So we'll need to get our metering system. Like can't right now. There is a balance. I think there's a general sense from half that we want to move with our ability to come up to a limit.
We have to switch the meter, right?
Yeah, we have to switch the meter and the infrastructure supporting. But so what we're going to end up doing is time to do it anyways. My system, which is our, that's what we're in the process of doing. MDM is kind of might potentially be an interest allows to do more time of use than our meters currently. All of the bottom line support from us in terms of when to do it, just not pushing it aggressively quite yet because it can only handle a certain number. RP, my system, and my system.
I got mine that I have to swap the meter, and I pay an extra $2 a month to recoup the meter. Is that how it happens? You know,
it is the friction's not in the process. The friction's in. We're not aggressively promoting it because
we don't want to get to a point where we say, we're letting the customers come along. It's not an aggressive advertisement. It's trying to find it out. So it's all right.
Proceed forward. Yep.
Catherine, back to you.
Yep.
All right, sounds good. So just kind of wrapping things up here with our considerations, and these we've largely gone over already, so I'll kind of breeze through these quickly and just touch on them briefly. But one was about rebate program offerings for residents and really pushing awareness of those through education efforts, just to ensure that customers are fully aware of all the rebates that are out there. This not only would help, drive awareness and potentially enrollment in those programs, but also help the perception that Reading helps customers understand energy efficiency programs. That was one of the characteristics that had slightly lower ratings than others. So that would be a good area to kind of boost ratings for, survey efforts moving forward. Offering the ability to opt into text message notifications. We saw that a lot of customers would be interested in receiving texts about things like outage updates, shred the peak alerts, and bill payment information. We also saw that a lot of customers wanted more information about outage updates overall. So texts are, obviously a really good way for people to be getting those notifications on a more real-time basis when there is a power outage. So that was kind of our recommendation there. And then lastly, looking at educating customers more about the benefits of air source heat pumps. Again, we did see a pretty significant increase in knowledge of air source heat pump technology. We already talked about a couple of different ideas that we might be able to employ for kind of twisting the communication and messaging surrounding air source heat pumps, so customers are a little bit more aware of what that technology actually means to them and what the different benefits would be. So that was kind of our recommendation there, just to continue to boost interest in that in air source heat pumps moving forward. And that takes us through to the end. I'll leave this up here if there's any other questions that folks didn't get a chance to answer or to ask during the presentation. We can take them at this point. These are just the names of some people who helped work on the project. So if you have any follow-up questions, these are all good people for you to reach out to.
Questions or discussion?
Last one. Do we know how many rental units there are in our territory versus non-rental as a proportion of the total number of units? 20. Rentals versus the other small point. I don't have that same number for. But one thing, higher proportion of the commercial, which will my earlier skepticism that lines up well, to the credit of the company with the 8.5% they said were rent funded, and Greg saying 10% of our customers are rent, so that lines up pretty well. Yeah, good.
So Greg, what's the next step? What are you going to do with this?
Well, we have quite a few action items, several of them, but increase the awareness in general. So there's air source heat pumps, there's the rates, bills, and rebates, and the other key thing we aren't talking about, but part of the management system plays the more emphasis on the tech. Email works very well. Doing a really good job in terms of the I think things we haven't pushed on quite as much. Text is a little bit different because text requires an opt-in. We've been instructing for ask them to opt in. So the takeaway bottom line is for more text messaging. We'll do a little bit of work on not a little bit of work. We'll our work on the renewable choice.
Do you think at some point we would have a mapping function I know National Grid has it, for example. And
We're part of it. Yeah. So we're nearly ready to, that'll be on the website, and then we can also link text messaging as well. Good news is our outages aren't.
Why do you need it?
I didn't say that.
Don't spend a lot of money on stuff you don't need. So,
But we do have an outage management system that's, it'll first come on the website and then.
Questions? Catherine, we thank you. So I
Yeah.
think we're set. Thank you.
Awesome,
Any
great.
parting words for us?
No, just thanks for having us and thanks for all the great questions. And just feel free to follow up if anything else pops up afterwards. My email's down there and then our phone number is at the bottom of the page as well. But feel free to reach out. Otherwise, thanks for having me.
All right, very good. Thank you
very much.
Absolutely. Bye. Have a good night.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to Hydro-Quebec.
So, as you know, we have price for a portion of that for since it was built. Selling those rights on a regular basis. To that, to monetize. Have an offer on the table now, our current contract for those use rights. December 30th. Offer we received. The range for the clock, which is down to our current the term will be and is higher than our overall portfolio, going at a premium. And there is a value will help drive down. But we don't get the energy from. They are providing energy as part of the grid. Yeah, so we're selling them the price they're paying us for them, and then
This is what we've been working on for the past year and a half, where we want to take it off of our Hydro-Quebec. Right. Kind of quirky that we're selling our rights and getting energy.
We're not getting the energy from Hydro-Quebec. We're selling the rights from it.
No. We are. So this deal, we would be buying energy, which is what we want to do. Currently, we're not buying any energy from Canada. No energy from Hydro-Quebec. Right. We are simply selling at a lower value than even this deal, rights for somebody else to use that line. And we've been working on, if you heard several times from us, to create a mechanism for us to energy on that Hydro-Quebec transmission line and carbon, which is this is a great opportunity for us. The only drawback, it's only 5 years. Right. This is the kind of structure that we've been working on.
I don't understand is about the transmission line, where that is. So it's been in place the entire time. I mean, I keep seeing that Maine and New Hampshire are fighting it for the last 20 miles. 20 kilowatts of capacity. So they won't expand it, is what you're saying?
We want to expand it beyond 20.
Right.
Yep.
I misunderstood that. For some reason I thought that the transmission line didn't exist.
Now, this one actually exists, and it's been in, built in the mid-80s, and the good news, we're in first. We were part of the original. This line physically exists, had no source from which to. Now we're actually using value that we originally had and made the investment. And happens to be not carbon, and it's reliable. It's firm, and this is incredibly good.
Is there a way to upgrade the transmission line to get more across the existing transmission? Right.
Or two.
You couldn't make the cable even bigger.
Not the sideline, but these transmission cables.
I know.
Years ago,
I've seen them.
well, they used to be a bundle of round coils, and maximize. If you look at the cross section, you maximize the amount of current you can push. And it's now a shaped strand. It's when you look at it cross section, it looks like a solid piece. But there's been massive amounts of investment in terms of how to maximize what's on there. But right, the next step, we'll know why.
Not gonna happen.
Yeah,
It's not coming through Vermont, it's not coming through Maine, it's not coming through New York, it's not coming down via submarine from Canada. It won't be directional drilled, it's total NIMBY. You can't even build on the existing right of way in parallel to what you have. It's absolutely the word insanity for a world that needs more power, that won't allow more power to be
insane. It
from clean energy sources, but which is the craziest thing in the place. But you know, that's a story, right?
Even along the same right away, huh?
No.
So this is part of the reason why, as you find, and we can try and figure out creative ways within territory where possible to generate our electricity, and also outside of our territory. The power supply for these reasons. A lot of effort for us internally, and you guys know that in the line as well. How you do this? The obvious way to do it. We call it tonight. How are we going to do this? So, and that's just, I mean, there's a lot of people, but we're.
I have a motion. You want to read the motion, John?
Oh, sure.
Read the motion agenda, please.
Move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners, on the recommendation of the Citizens Advisory Board, vote to accept the General Manager's recommendation to execute a new contract with Hydro-Quebec for energy and associated certificates for a 5-year contract starting January 2024.
Is that seconded? Second? Alina seconds it. Question, the Citizen Advisory Board was unanimous?
Yes,
Okay.
that was the main topic of.
Well, as I informed you earlier.
Thank you, CAB.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? And then, we'll take a vote of the board. Zempak?
Aye.
Talbot?
How about I?
Walter? Ms. Beedham? Ms. Chair votes aye. On to the procurement request.
Okay, so this first item is the IFP 2023-12. This was the full mounted transformers. Typically, this is the one that we talked about when we were together in March. Collectively, the discussion was, can you take a closer look at MBA as a supplier? MBA was recommended supplier of these pole mounted transformers. The context, as you guys probably would surmise, but pole mounted transformers, well, all transformers, they're still hard to come by. I won't use the word supply chain, but it is a challenging market to purchase. I'll walk you through a little bit of the research that the internal relative to MBA, but ultimately we're going to make a recommendation to purchase a small portion through MBA and then a different power industries through power sales. Let me walk you a little bit through MBA. You guys know, right, our intention, as RMLD is to source equipment, whether it's transformers or wires or poles or tools, from companies that are established, reliable, and where possible manufacturing in North America. Our goal. We also have to make sure that we fulfill the core charter of reliable, low-cost, non-carbon power. So we took a look at MBA. So quick summary of MBA, it's a Montreal-based company. Established in 1991. They operate primarily in Canada and the U.S. Their focus is to design high and medium voltage equipment for transmission systems, distribution substations. They started manufacturing transformers in 2010. Now, they design the transformers and they subcontract the manufacturing. These transformers are made in China. That is the one concern we have about the organization. But financially, and they're not, and so I'll give you some data here in a second. The company is relatively speaking small, but financially strong. So they're about $60 million Canadian, 2022. That's up from $10 million, 2021, up from $8.7 million in 2020. About $10 million in assets, most of which are $7.7 million in cash and retained earnings. Their current liability is only about $2 million. Their debt, long-term debt, is $300,000. So financially, really strong company, but they're not massive. They're not very big. Been around for over 25 years. They've been manufacturing transformers 12 years. So anyway, kind of bottom line, relatively small, financially strong. One profit, and they're also ISO 9000 registered. They have been since 2015. Their ISO 9001 registration in June, as well as 2025. All said and done, okay, not great, but we don't have a good viable source to get transformers to us where we can take the delivery in a fairly reasonable time frame. So our recommendation, as opposed to buying several hundred, is to buy 50 or 52 technically. 50 kVA transformers. We're going to try to do a mix between 37.5 and 50 kV transformers, pole mounted. The majority of our transformers, pole mounted transformers, 50 kVA. So our recommendation is to buy 50 to try them. Intention is not to make this a long-term supply contract. Transformers now, kVAs, if we have problems with them or whatever, we have enough inventory flowing through. This is our commonly used transformer. Massive risk by doing this. That's the first part of the recommendation. Second piece is we still need to larger the 150 kVA and the 225 kVA. These are three-phase. These are more commercial-oriented ones. The other ones are primarily residential. Order 4 of the 150 kVA and 2 of the 225 kVA power sales. These are our industries we've worked with in the past. The time is 2x what it would be. Cost is after 3 times more expensive. However, they are commercial transformers. They're ones that we don't tend to buy as frequently. For us to take the longer lead time and the more buy what quality for them.
Are made in the U.S.
The left two. Only the MBAs are. That's our recommendation. It's a smaller order than we originally planned. We are going to go back out and rebid full mounted technology market. It was the team worked pretty hard to figure out what's the best scenario. Potentially viable. Get the summary.
Sorry, go ahead, John.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask if the MVA has any plans to move manufacturing out of China. Many firms are doing this now. They're moving Vietnam, Cambodia, they're moving basically because of the whole trade situation.
We didn't ask that question, John.
They provide a broad range of products, started in gas parts, clips, and all sorts of things. So they're doing a range of transformers. 12 years. I don't know their plans, to be honest. If they do that, obviously, then we'd be much more. The good news, they designed them. It's their name, right? They warrant them, so it's subcontract to manufacturing. Their name's on it. Can't say they're going to be here 25 years from now.
Yeah.
But
It's just disturbing. I mean, Walmart's not going to give up toasters, mate. That's right.
yeah, well, we're trying. We're trying to all if we can. Case, we reduce exercise. This is what we that will keep us running and minimum risk. We don't know. Good news, these aren't overly complicated systems. They're single phase transformers, right? Or less. $1,000 on each one of them. Money when you multiply.
Does National Grid have any?
Your cell phone?
Yeah, I know. No, it's purchasing. You know, I right now it's go to when you're contracted with purchase, but I know there's such a dearth that you can take away, you can get them. The only thing that the financials sound like in that company, it's not very big. It sounds like an importer that has massively grown over the last 2 years, but they saw an opportunity to because there is a market there.
Yeah.
Again, these prices just how do you do it, right? And how do you get it in? How do you get it out? It's always a question. But it's just jumping off the page. But do a small order, try it.
Yeah.
The quality, they start blowing up.
Yeah.
Okay. You know.
Oh, we know. Turn the balance.
Exactly.
Right. It's not ideal. I think it's a test. But it's
a test. Yeah.
If they decide to bring manufacturing closer, that makes it totally different. But I think for us, this is basically a stopgap to get us through.
But where's the other? You know, where's the other supplier? I know you said you had an inventory right now.
Yeah, we do.
Right.
We took an order. So we took a delivery of 75 of these January.
Yeah.
You know, so we're but this lead time, right? 30 weeks.
Yes.
Like
another order.
You got to keep, transformers just don't say, hey, no worries, I'll stay here a little longer.
Yeah, right.
Now we got 70,000. Go ahead.
On what's on the present agenda, and then
Right.
for the full mounted transformers, the cost on the iPad says a total of $337,000. Then on the print one, it says 580,000. You see what I see?
Yeah, the thing is, the motion that's in the agenda is not the motion here. We have a different motion here I have in front of me. So,
Why don't you read that one?
the motion I have in front of me is move that IFP 2023-12 full mounted transformers be awarded to NVA Power Inc. for $141,046.80, and Howard Industries Inc. care of Power Sales Group for $193,932 pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 64, Section Paragraph 56D, on the recommendation of the General Manager. That's the motion I have in front of me. Yes, it's what the motion that's in the agenda is different than what we have.
Yeah.
The iPad does have the correct motion.
And just in fairness, because we've been working, so the final motion that we're actually voting, the one that Bill just read, is up this afternoon. Because we've hard to, what's the right and the best balance. We wanted to get this finalized. So the total is about 350,000, but 193 plus 183.
Yeah.
So roughly 350. Smaller order. Going back to your original comment, it's not the one that was in the original agenda was 581,000 for 350. And again, that's out of a budget of 1.3 million. So we're taking a small bite out of the apple for all intents and purposes. So the motion that you're voting on is the one that Phil just read. 193,932 for 43,046 for FDA, and 193,932.
That's all.
That's what you're voting on.
So now the procedural question, are we going to have, could MVA come forward and protest this because it's in the agenda and we're changing the motion? Are we on any kind of shaky ground here?
If I have it right, the agenda. Exactly. But where.
But the minutes show that,
And again, I think that's keyword by the word suggested in the final motion. So we're voting on the final motion. Double check, I'll be happy to do that. On confirmation from council, which I'll.
Change motions all the time.
Okay.
We change motions all the time, so I don't see why.
I know.
Exactly.
But this,
So, like,
this
just
is a
change
major
that.
change. You know, you're going from, 581,000 NBP power, and you split their motion now going, they're only gonna go to 143,000. I see potentially MVP could say, hey, I protest this bid.
Well, they don't have anything to protest because they put in for 142. They're the ones that they didn't put in for 542. They
submitted a bid for 666,000. You know, and we could, from a perspective, we can choose as much or as little. I think the only question you have, Chair, is comparison of the suggested motion agenda versus the actual motion that we're voting on, which is 43,000.
Have some qualms about that change of that motion, but I don't know how others feel. You just go forward with it or what? I mean, just one member. Okay. Reasonable?
reasonable, yeah, because one, we say suggestion motion, two, we have changed in the past. There's no long history, we've changed motion to reflect the reality.
Just their communication.
Okay, fine, I just want to make
That's
sure.
the recent communication. 1,000 plus, and then it.
So we haven't placed the act, so this is their bid response. They said we can do all these items for this price. And then order. But in the request for bid, that we can order as little or none. It's up to us to say what we want, we as RMLD want to order, and that is expected part of every bid that we send. From that perspective, we're clean. The question is the suggested versus the actual. The actual that you guys are voting on.
We're voting.
Okay.
We're voting.
Actual, correct,
Yes.
the one that you just.
All right, so,
Clarification, should we read? The actual.
well, if we're willing, if the members are willing to vote on the motion that I read here, that's fine. I mean, all things, I think what we do is we show in the record that the motion was substituted for the suggested motion in the agenda.
And no one seconded it.
So far, nobody's even made the motion. All I
Right,
did was just
no one
read the
made a
motion. I need somebody to make the motion.
Second.
Okay. You make the motion to adopt what I just.
Yes, I
Substitute motion.
I'd like to make the motion to adopt Phil's suggested motion.
Okay.
No, actual motion.
Actual.
Action.
It's not called an amendment, though, right?
Not
Not
called
amending
amendment, just a
motion,
substitute
different.
motion. It's a substitute motion. So, is that seconded?
I'll second it.
Okay. Discussion?
Unless, these are our first offers to end the capital budget of 1 point. Amounted. It's the first time we're dipping into what our
Correct.
capital budget
Yeah.
allocation.
And
Okay, that's
we've got more bids to send out and orders to do. We need transformers.
Ready for a vote? Yep. Mr. Stempak?
Stempak, aye.
Talbot? Mr. Coulter? Ms. Vida?
Aye.
Okay, and the chair votes aye. Okay, very good. Come on. The next one I do think Greg too, right?
Sir,
Okay?
I'm gonna walk you through it and then.
Yep, go ahead.
So, as we've talked about before, this is part of our program. So, the discussion we just had, first one, heat pump program. Our tools, we have a pretty wide variety. There's been requests from customers on a regular basis, and we've been working the last year or so together a weatherization program. Basically, be part of the output from the audit program that's already in place. So we have an active audit program. What we want to do is offer a base level weatherization, primarily insulation. The mass save programs are much more. We're just going to get started with some. It is the intention. We're going to walk before we run is to have it as an option site to those people. Part of the benefit of doing the weather is air source heat pump. Air source heat pumps are efficient. Is well in. The complexity of a range that goes behind the scenes. Very careful at RMLD. Ability by structure this program, not unlike less a massive subcontract out the person who actually selects the contractor, the person who actually schedules the contractor. Work is all done by a third party, not RMLD. We'll provide, once that work is all done, we'll provide a rebate back. On the weatherization, we have $4,000 to be done. RCTV. Installation. We had 2 bids that came in. We put together a fairly very thoughtful request for proposals. We received code and one was for the Center of Eco Technology. Both of these are very active in this space. As you guys know, our air source heat pump. Well, they ended up, the 2 bids came through. One from Vogue came in at $473,000, and the one from the Center for Technology came in at $67,000. Actually went through criteria listing relative to criteria, work plan, qualification, staffing, and the price proposal. Put that all together at total points of 400. Ended up at 321 points. Eco Technology Group ended up at 2. That was due to the price. All said and done, the recommendation is to select a responsible company to actually manage it.
That cost $1,000 for 3.
Yeah, so right now on the air source heat pump, so we have it in the budget, right? It's in our DEC. There's no incremental cost to it. That's part of the reason why we did the raise went. Reference. Air source heat pump program is about $8,900 a month. As we looked at everything, it seemed like a fair program. fits into the budget and it achieves our goal of weatherization services. All right now, a subset of our customers. My intention is not to offer it as a standalone for people who air source heat.
Right, Bob?
Why are we doing that? I'm struggling with, in our survey, and there was a thing about, you know, what's being offered, and I don't understand. I know there are a lot of people that want that installation program, because that's us, right? So, and I understand you're getting 2 at once, so you're gonna get you're already going efficient, now you're gonna make it super efficient, where I know a lot of people want this program.
Yeah, so
They ask about
a key piece of information I probably didn't share with you, but 90% of our customers, so it does affect air conditioning, but more any system for that. Majority of people are heating with either oil or natural gas.
Correct.
We're not in the oil business, and we're not in the natural gas business. Logic, is those people that were actually becoming new customers with an air source heat pump, those that would be oil system or natural gas system. Didn't want to do is providing an incentive to oil or natural gas customer who had no natural relationship to electricity to provide an incentive for the wasn't logic behind it. The only way we could really do it, the simplest way we could do it, right. Could go back and make a provision that you have to be an air source heat pump already. Let's walk before we run this. But the key thing is that for the natural gas customers are not.
It's a fair response. That's a good response. So if someone asked that question, that's a perfect response to come back and say, well, you want more.
You're taking ratepayer money.
Yeah, why would you back?
No benefits.
That's correct.
Motion, please.
So just ask that one thing on the motion, the pennies category, even though it's MLS. 202.
202.
It's 20 cents on this one, so if you just move that to 20.
No, that too is meant to be super. Right, super good.
So it's $475,000 and $20 and
20 cents.
And 20 cents. That's
That extra two assumption.
oh,
Can we round?
Price analysis.
Got it. I see that here. Okay.
Can we actually go to round numbers here? I mean, it seems crazy. We get 64 cents and 20 cents.
Yeah. Well,
I like that. But I have to make sure that from a purchasing perspective, we
move that RFP 2023-04 for home weatherization rebate program implementation and support services be awarded to Load Energy Management LLC as the responsive and responsible proposer offering the most advantageous proposal. The estimated average monthly cost of $13,196.64 over the next 3 years, or a total estimated 3-year cost of $475,079.20 on the recommendation of the general manager.
That's seconded? Seconds it? Any discussion? No, we'll vote. Mr. Stempak?
Mr. Stempak, aye.
Albert? Mr. Colville? Ms. Beedham?
Aye.
And the chair votes yeah. Okay?
I think this is really good.
Okay. I want my 0.2 cents back.
Actually, don't multiply it out. That's fun.
2 cents is that, yeah.
Okay, move on. Policy review, please.
All right, the policy. So, as you guys know, we continue on a regular basis to review policies. The two today are policy 1 and policy 3. Policy 1 is community relations. And what we went through on the community relations, I saw from the package. At the end of the day, we significantly revised, the policy, primarily for streamlining and clarity. Many of the sections were removed, some of them were refined, some of them were actually gonna move to internal procedures. It was 9 pages, pretty detailed stuff that we thought was more appropriate in a procedure. In terms of revision highlights, primarily in section 2. Here, so section 2 responsibilities, that was just clean up and clarified. Section 3, charitable contributions. We have legal opinions in terms of what we can and can't do, which is not a lot, right? So we're basically going with the legal. Advertising. We don't do a lot of advertising, but it basically said that we couldn't RMLD. So we basically clarified because we do, back to the feedback we just got from, we do want to promote. Section 4, services to town within the RMLD service territory. We remove any indemnifications. Separate agreements as is appropriate, doesn't belong in the community program. We went through this and we're like, you guys know policies and procedures, add stuff to them when they get pretty complicated. Sometimes you just need to go back and really clean it. This one is significantly streamlined. It's down to 3 pages. Recommendation is to accept the revision. Obviously, review it on a regular basis. Our focus, you guys know that my focus is on communication and marketing promotion. Our goal here is to work proactive in terms of promoting who we are and the education.
Discussion? Motion? Go ahead.
In part 3 in the charitable contributions, it says that this policy does not prohibit RMLD from contributing funds. Right? I hope
There are limits, yeah. So we have to follow the policies. So if you go to section 3 of the actual document,
yes,
right? It says RMLD follows the policies and guidelines of the Department of Public Utilities regarding charitable contributions. And that is not permitted contribute funds to the towns that serve in accordance with the 20-year agreements. So the point being is that we have to stick within the DPU and within the 20-year agreement. That's what the new policy says. Then we can't. But we're significant.
No, I just wanted to, because I know that came up before when we want, we want to make a charitable donation, and no, we can't do that. And
it comes up regularly.
It comes up regularly because I know there's a lot of asks.
Yeah, there are.
And then you can easily say, you can defer to this and say no, but there are.
You know what we might end up doing? And that's a good point. We might end up, we put somewhere on the website because there's policies we need. There's regulatory policies. That's not just from the fee, but in particular, and then lesser. I shouldn't say lesser. I think we just legally can't do. And it was particularly prevalent when you get into the holiday season, right? Every 2 weeks, I got a call. Just can't.
How many?
Like, hey, it's not that no, we don't want to. Just we're not. Right. Maybe we put something on the website. So it's posted. It's already there. So, anyways, thanks. I'll do that.
Ready for the motion? Yep.
Move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners approve Policy 1, Community Relations, Revision 5, as
It
presented.
should be revision 4.
Revision 4.
It should be revision 4. Sorry.
Revision 4, as presented on the recommendation of the chairman.
That's seconded? Hold the seconded? Further discussion? Mr. Stempak?
Mr. Stempak, aye.
Talbot? Mr. Goldberg? Ms. Beedham?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Safety Committee.
Right. Safety Committee. obviously, safety is critically important to us, critically important to us. That we do specific, especially the people in the field. Critically important. We had this safety policy basically covered a wellness group, an internal safety group, an electrical safety group. Once again, it was wieldy and complicated, so we went back. Well, internal team went back and streamlined the process to another group. Didn't really belong to the safety committee. I mean, I understand the concept behind it, but we moved it. Basically combined the general and the electrical. The electrical basically reported into the program. We're a group of 80 people. Safety committee of and the group. Much more effective. Basically took the top layer out of all intents and purposes. Change the thing and simplify. Okay.
How many people is it? It's not 18.
Core group, I believe now is 6.
Questions? The motion, please.
Move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners approve Policy 3, Safety Committee, Division 4, as presented on the recommendation of the General Manager.
That's seconded. Both second. Mr. Talbot seconds it too. Take your pick out. Okay. Any discussion further? For the vote, Mr. Talbot, Mr. Talbot, Mr. Holton, Peter, and the chair votes aye. All right, we're up to scheduling. Our next meeting is May the 25th. Are we okay with that date, everybody?
That's right. 20.
Yeah, the 25th. That's what I said. Didn't I say the 25th?
It's a Thursday, actually, right?
It's a Thursday.
It should be fine.
CAB is meeting at 5. Our meeting, and then
We want to pull it up
I have
5:30.
that night.
Yeah, it is meeting.
intentionally so that they can then come to our.
But do you want to stick around for another hour? But do you want to move our meeting time up?
They requested that it be 5:30 because they don't want to talk about if their meeting runs long, then it will.
Don't want it. That's probably not different.
Yeah, no, I was saying, why don't we move our meeting up to 7? And if you have an hour and a half meeting, because that means you don't have a long period of time in between.
Oh, no.
Essentially.
I was trying to combine the two.
Oh, I would.
We had a long discussion about having to be any flexibility for the cab to get longer than it wants to. Or my specific request was we'll start earlier at 5:30, so we have a full 2 hours if we need it.
I don't mind. I mean, I don't want to pull away the independence of it, but I have no problem combining the two together. It's a long night, man.
We might end up doing that on the main meeting. We'll take a look at the agenda topics. That one might merit meeting. We'll do a little research on that and get back to you.
So I have a conflict that night, so I'm not going to do it
At all.
So, but we still have
5:30, 7:30.
Yeah, we still got, no other problems, okay? We still can meet, okay? We're good. Stick with the 25th, and do we want to meet all together, or what's our decision on that one?
We'll,
Still 5:30 and we're 7.
the defaults, unless you hear otherwise.
Okay, all right, fine. All right, and then after that is June 15th, so. All right, very good. We can all read the others. There's some future meetings, for people. And we got the chart as to who's doing what where. Okay? Everybody can read. Back here. We just have adjournment, so if I can have a motion to adjourn?
Move that the Board of Commissioners adjourn regular session.
Okay, second? Impact, Mr. Talbot, Mr. Coulter, Ms. Beta, the chair votes aye. We're adjourned. Right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.